you're the president, I'm over in the House, and I'm trying to get these House members to do right by their constituents, which means going against you. But you're taking out your time when people are literally struggling. You said on day one you were going to reduce the price of eggs. We ain't heard nothing about it. You know, you said that you were going to stop all the wars in the world, and it seems like, you know, you go in the opposite direction. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's real issues and there's people that are hurting, and then you had this random sidekick who decided that he was going to cut off the aid.
Señores, hay algo que todos sabemos, y es que es muy fácil molestar a Donald Trump. Vivir en su cabeza sin pagar alquiler, eso ya es otro nivel. Hoy vamos a hablar de alguien que ha logrado esto, uno de los muchos, y es la congresista Jasmine Crockett. Apenas va a su segundo año en el Congreso de los Estados Unidos y ya es una verdadera estrella del Partido Demócrata. Recientemente fue invitada al programa de VIVO y con un solo comentario logró que tanto Trump como su secretaria, su portavoz, Caroline Leavitt, hicieran cortocircuito en tiempo real. Antes de que veamos ese momento exacto, veamos cómo Leavitt, por lo menos, se derrite en vivo. Empecemos por Jasmine Crockett, que amigos, no se anduvo con rodeos.
So in a campaign where we talked about trans folk like ad nauseum, right? I just wanted to be clear that the harm that people are feeling every single day, that is not caused by trans people. It's caused by the person sitting in the White House.
Yeah.
So before we get into everything today, we're celebrating Juneteenth.
Yeah.
Tell me about Juneteenth.
Listen, now I'm a Texan.
Yes, you are.
So I feel like the rest of the country is just now kind of getting tuned in. But I will tell you that being a Black woman, and for those that don't understand Juneteenth, this was about the fact that the last slaves down in Texas finally 2 years later realized that, or were made aware that they were no longer enslaved people. But in this time, though, especially with the anti-DEI movement and the rollback just of our civil rights and our civil liberties as a whole, as well as ignoring the Constitution, and there's so many rights that Black folk got specifically just from the Constitution, I think that this Juneteenth, everyone, whether you're Black or otherwise, should really evaluate what does freedom look like in this country? And are we willing to fight for it? And I think, you know, evaluating what happened at No Kings, I think we are ready and willing to fight for our freedom. But I think that it is important that we come together and we define what freedom looks like for those of us in this country, not just Black folk.
That's right.
Do you
think that No Kings demonstration is going to do something?
I hope so. I think that it's good to be in community. Right now, a lot of people are like, what can I do? And I feel helpless and that kind of stuff. But literally to show up and to see that there's so many like-minded people, as soon as you get off of X, you can find, you know, like-minded people, right? And so, like, seeing them in person and being in community and having that percent, I mean, it's astounding. It makes you say, you know what? I'm not crazy, okay? Like,
and I'm not alone.
Exactly. And
Whoopi says that all the time. We're not alone, and that proves it.
It does. It really does.
Anyway, in recent months, Trump has called you, quote, a low IQ person and a low life. Do you take that as a sign that you're doing something right?
I hope he also calls her a lawyer. That's another thing that she is.
No, he did not. He did not.
You know, he's good at projecting, is what I'll say to that. But, you know, I can't imagine being the president of the United States with everything that's going on in the world and worried about a sophomore in the House.
Well, you're a powerhouse, darling. Don't minimize.
Still, he the president of the United States, right? So it talks about, like, his level of petty, number one. And it also just kind of goes to the fact that, like, he's not focused on the things that he needs to focus on. Listen, you're the president, I'm over in the House, and I'm trying to get these House members to do right by their constituents, which means going against you. But you're taking out your time when people are literally struggling. You said on day one you were going to reduce the price of eggs. We ain't heard nothing about it. You know, you said that you were going to stop all the wars in the world, and it seems like, you know, you go in the opposite direction. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's real issues and there's people that are hurting, and then you had this random sidekick who decided that he was going to cut off the aid to everybody, and then you're losing in court every single day. You know, talk about, listen, call him the biggest loser, because like the courts are handing him some losses. So I'm just like, can you get your stuff in order? Like, can you focus? But...
Y es que estoy totalmente de acuerdo. Donald Trump está mal de la cabeza. Si tú apoyas una propuesta de deportación que fue diseñada con la intención de ser la más cruel posible, de arrancar familias, de castigar a gente que vino a este país a trabajar y a buscar la libertad, entonces, sinceramente, tú también estás un poquito mal. No me parece ninguna locura decir eso. Lo que sí me parece una locura es que Caroline Leavitt se haya sentido tan atacada que entró en pánico en su conferencia de prensa. Veamos esa joyita.
Really quick on Jasmine Crockett. She said, I believe that Trump supporters are mentally ill before calling for bipartisan support against the president. Can you respond to that, especially considering she's a rising star in the Democrat Party right now?
She is a rising star. It's quite something to behold, actually. I hope that she continues to be a rising star for the Republican Party, at least. I think it's incredibly derogatory to accuse nearly 80 million Americans of mental illness. The last time I checked, Jasmine Crockett couldn't dream of winning such a majority of the public as President Trump did. And the America First movement, which President Trump has built, is filled of hardworking patriots, the forgotten men and women, business owners, law enforcement officers, nurses and teachers, and middle America, as we all know, you know, from where you all grew up, outside of this beltway. That's who makes up this president's movement. And Jasmine Crockett should go to a Trump rally sometime and she can see it for herself.
Y es que lo de Caroline Leavitt es algo ya un poco caricaturesco, ¿no? Habla como si estuviera encima de un caballo blanco, moral e imaginario. Ay, que los demócratas desprecian a los votantes de Trump, que odian a este país. Háganme el favor. Mientras ellos hacen los ofendidos, recordemos, Donald Trump fue a Fort Bragg, una base militar, a decirle a los soldados que abuchearan a California. ¿Quién odia a quién? Pero sí, amigos, resulta que cuando una ciudad pequeña en Mississippi, que votó 95% por Trump, pierde Medicaid y cupones de alimentos, y algunos demócratas comentan que eso es consecuencia de sus decisiones, al parecer ahora los demócratas son acusados por mirarte por encima del hombro. ¿Quiénes son los que llaman a ciudades como Nueva York, como Chicago, como Los Ángeles, basureros infestados? ¿Quién está insultando al país realmente? Y eso, ¿no? Que si hablamos de dinero, los estados azules como California son los que prácticamente financian los presupuestos de los estados republicanos. Pero claro, en algunas escuelas del sur no enseñan matemáticas básicas. Parece que no les da para entenderlo. Y eso, amigos, ese recorte brutal del presupuesto es el que va a dejar a millones sin asistencias. Y es parte de lo que denunció Jasmine Crockett en vivo. Vamos a verlo.
Like at the end of the day, would you rather have a tax bill that may be $5, you know, less that you're normally keeping in your pockets, but you don't have this crazy random healthcare bill?
Right.
Probably so, right? Like, and the reality is that people are going to die. You know, listening to the stories of people that literally have only been able to live because of Medicaid, it's heartbreaking. And the fact that we're talking about rich people just keeping more money in their pockets while literally other people are going to die, it sounds anti-American and definitely sounds anti-patriotic.
So one of the things that generally, when I've covered big bills in domestic policy in D.C., you know, there's this idea of like the Senate is like the cooling saucer, and that, you know, and that usually things come back from the Senate like more moderate, but both on the left and the right. That is generally the way things go. It seems to me like Ron Johnson and the sort of right-wing faction in the Senate is actually pushing to make this bill more aggressive on the cuts side. And I'm wondering if you were anticipating that, or if you thought you were expecting a more moderate bill.
No, I was expecting the Senate to fix everything. I mean, I was expecting it still to come back as a bad bill, but we're talking about
You thought it would get better.
Correct. I thought it would get better. We're talking about a bill that only made it through the House by one vote.
Right.
one vote. So literally it's like 2 people went AWOL, right? And another 2 Republicans voted with the Dems. And then another one just said, listen, I'm just going to white light this or, vote present.
Yeah.
And so I expected in the Senate, especially because think about it this way. Our congressional districts are approximately 766,000 people. And so literally there are some Republicans that don't have any hospitals whatsoever in their districts. But then you start talking about the Senate, every single state senator has hospitals. And when you start to talk about rural hospitals possibly shutting down because they don't have enough funding because you're now cutting this Medicaid funding and they can't supplement because they don't have all these other people coming in with, say, private insurance, I thought that the senators would say, listen, we can't do this.
Well, it's funny you say that because one of the things, my understanding, again, the details here get a little complicated, but there's this mechanism called the provider tax, which actually would hurt hospitals.
Yeah.
Let's sort of do the short version that way. They're trying to squeeze more revenue. My feeling always when I used to cover Congress day in, day out was that the hospitals were big interest groups.
They are.
They will drop money on your head if they don't like it. They will be up in your office.
Yes.
Where are the hospitals? Honestly, it's wild to me that they have not shown up in a big way.
I don't know.
To fight this bill.
I have no idea. I mean, it's kind of like you saw the farmers, right? Like when we were going through that, like, continuing resolution, the farmers were like, wait a minute. Like they showed up, like the Farm Bureau was like, we are here, right? And so it is odd because the hospital lobby is a really big lobby. And a lot of people probably think of lobbies and they think, oh, you're going to be the antithesis of me. But when you're talking about rural America, like I lived in East Texas, let me tell you, hospitals are shutting down. And in rural America, you don't have as many providers either. And so literally, if you have this specialized cancer, you can't stay at home. You've got to go somewhere else because there's no one that knows about the help that you need. So it is really odd. And I tell you this, that there's going to be more hurt that comes to red states than blue states. Blue states can actually take in a lot of this, not to say that they should and not to say that it's right, but like it will be
disproportionately red states will get hurt by the Medicaid cuts in both these versions.
Yes.
Sinceramente, me encantaría sentir un poco de compasión por toda esa gente que va a perder el acceso a salud, a comida, a seguridad básica. Pero también hay que decirlo con claridad. Esto es por lo que votaron. No tú ni yo, ellos. Y eso lo han explicado muy bien desde varios espacios, ¿no? Como el de Bulwark, con Tim Miller. Amigos, tantos canales progresistas que han venido advirtiendo este tema. Ellos te lo dicen en la cara, que el gobierno federal ha protegido tanto a los votantes republicanos de las consecuencias de sus malas decisiones, que nunca han conectado los puntos. Han votado por su propia destrucción. Nunca lo han sentido de verdad. Hasta ahora. Porque esta administración viene con todo, amigos. Y aunque no lo disfruten, puede que por fin aprendan la lección. Y ojalá, ¿no? Para que esto no pueda seguir. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme hasta el final de este video. Como siempre, recuerda, dale like, compártelo con tus amigos y suscríbete a nuestro canal Políticamente Desacuerdo. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.